Kaelin had always known her people valued fertility more than anything else. In her world, children were the symbol of strength, and women who could not bear them were treated like broken glass, shiny once, but useless when cracked. She was born among the Alvani, a noble alien race with silver skin that shimmered faintly under light. The Alvani were proud, elegant, and cruel in quiet ways. Kaelin was raised with care in her youth, taught to sing in the old tongue, trained in politics, and dressed in jewels. Everyone expected she would someday marry into a strong family and give birth to many children, but the dream shattered when she reached maturity. Her tests returned with a single word stamped in bright red: infertile. From that day, her family stopped seeing her as a daughter. Her mother wept but turned away. Her father spoke only once: "You bring no honor." Her younger siblings avoided her, afraid that her curse might somehow fall on them. Soon she was given away, no longer treated as Kaelin, the daughter of House Virion, but as Kaelin, the burden. Her people did not waste what they thought was worthless. They sold it. The slave market smelled of sweat, iron, and despair. Kaelin stood on the platform, her silver skin dull under the harsh lights. Traders shouted numbers, alien bidders raised paddles, and voices cut through the air like knives. "And Alvani female, strong bones, graceful build," the trader barked. "Infertile, yes, but still useful for labor." The crowd chuckled cruelly. To them, she was not a person. She was a discarded tool. Kaelin's chest burned with shame. She tried to keep her head high, but her heart ached. She had been raised to walk in silk halls, yet here she stood barefoot, sold like unwanted trash. The bidding was short. Few wanted an infertile Alvani. A handful of alien merchants offered small sums, just enough to buy her for cleaning or manual work. The trader looked frustrated. Then, in the back of the market, a tall man raised his hand. He wore no armor, no jewels, just plain brown clothes. His face was weathered from sun, his hands rough from labor. He was human. 200 credits, he said calmly. The crowd laughed. A human farmer wants her? What will he do? Teach her to dig in the dirt? But the auctioneer slammed his gavel. Sold. And just like that, Kaelin belonged to a stranger. The journey to the humans' world was quiet. The man did not speak much. His name, she learned, was Daniel Rains. His voice was deep but gentle, with no mockery in it. When the ship landed, Kaelin stepped out onto the soil of a small colony world. It was nothing like the shining towers of Alvani cities. Here the land stretched wide and open. Golden fields waved in the breeze, broken only by wooden fences and small machines tending crops. The air smelled fresh, carrying the scent of grass and earth. Kaelin had never known such a smell. Her people lived in sealed cities where nature was controlled. Daniel led her to a farmhouse. It was simple, built of wood and metal with a porch where vines climbed the railings. Chickens clucked nearby and a dog wagged its tail. "You'll live here now," Daniel said. "I don't need a servant. I need help. You'll eat, you'll work, and you'll have a roof, that's fair?" Kaelin blinked at him, confused. She had expected orders, chains, maybe cruelty. But his words were calm, almost kind. "Why, did you buy me?" she asked softly. Daniel shrugged. "Didn't like the way they looked at you. Like you were nothing. Out here, everyone's got worth if they're willing to try." His words struck her deeply. Worth. She had not heard that word given to her in so long. At first, life on the farm was strange and difficult. Kaelin did not know how to milk goats, mend fences, or plant seeds. Her hands, once trained for delicate gestures, blistered under rough work. The first time she carried water buckets, she spilled half on the ground. The second time she tried to guide the old tractor, she nearly ran it into a fence. Daniel did not shout. He only smiled a little and showed her again. "You'll get it," he said. "Takes time." Kaelin found herself staring at him sometimes, puzzled. He was not like her people. The Alvani punished failure with scorn. Daniel met it with patience. At night, she sat on the porch, looking up at the sky. Stars shimmered above, far brighter than the artificial ceilings of her homeworld. The wind was cool, carrying the sound of insects. She wrapped a blanket around herself and felt quiet. Not happy, not yet, but quieter than she had felt in years. One evening, Kaylin overheard Daniel speaking with a trader who had come to the farm. "You bought her cheap," the trader said. "I'll give you 5 times the price. The Alvani will pay well to have her back for labor." Kaylin froze, her heart pounding. Would he sell her again? But Daniel's voice was firm. "Not interested." "Come on," the trader pressed. "She's not worth keeping. You could buy new equipment with that money." Daniel's answer was steady. "She's worth more here. She's learning, working, and I don't sell people." The trader left, in frustration. Kaylin, hidden by the wall, pressed her hand to her chest. For the first time, someone had chosen to keep her not out of need, but out of belief that she mattered. That night, she could not sleep. She sat awake, watching the faint light of the moon spill across the fields. A warmth stirred inside her chest. It was fragile, like the first sprout breaking through soil, but it was there. The next weeks brought small changes. Kaylin laughed, for the first time in years when a goat knocked her over into the mud. She groaned in frustration when a chicken stole food from her hands, but even that felt alive in a way her old life never had. Daniel showed her how to cook human meals. Simple. Bread, stews, and roasted vegetables. The food was hearty, not elegant, but filling. She found herself looking forward to meals where silence between them was not heavy, but comfortable. Sometimes she told him pieces of her past. She spoke of the silver halls of her people, the songs they sang, the jewels they wore. He listened, without judgment, nodding as though every word mattered. In return, he told her about Earth, the blue oceans, the forests, the cities. His voice grew soft when he spoke of his parents, who had worked the farm before him. Kaylin realized they were both, in their own ways, alone. He had lost his family to time, and she had lost hers to pride. Yet together, they had begun to build something new. Still, doubt lingered in her heart. One night as they sat by the fire, she asked quietly, "Daniel, do you really believe I have worth? Even when my people cast me away?" He looked at her, his eyes steady. "I don't care what your people said. You're not trash. You're Kaylin. You work hard, you learn, you care. That's worth more than anything." Her throat tightened and she looked away, blinking against tears. No one had spoken to her like that before. For the first time, she began to wonder if perhaps this place, this farm, this man, was not her prison, but the beginning of something she had never known. A home. And so, Part 1 closes with Kaylin, standing on the porch at dawn, watching the first light spill across golden fields. The air is cool and her hands are sore, but for the first time since being cast aside, she feels something she thought was gone forever. The first morning after Kaylin decided to accept this new life, she rose before the sun. Her body was still sore from work the day before, but she forced herself up. She had promised Daniel she would help, and she did not want to disappoint him. When she stepped outside, the sky was painted with soft colors, pale pink, gold, and light blue. The air smelled of dew and soil. For a moment, Kaylin stood silently, taking it all in. On her homeworld, mornings had no true sunrise. The sky there was controlled, painted with artificial light. This sunrise felt real. Daniel was already outside, checking the fences. He looked up and gave her a small nod. "You're early," he said. "I wish to work," Kaylin replied. Her voice was still quiet, but there was determination in it. "Good," Daniel said. "Then let's start." Work was harder than she expected. Daniel handed her a basket and asked her to collect eggs from the chickens. The birds were not friendly. They flapped their wings, pecked at her hands, and made loud clucking noises. Kaylin tried to keep calm, but one stubborn hen chased her out of the coop. Daniel laughed softly from where he was repairing a gate. Don't let them scare you, they're small. Kaylin frowned, embarrassed. They are vicious creatures, she muttered, holding up her scratched hand. Vicious? Daniel chuckled. They're just protecting their eggs. Try again. Move slow. This time, she crouched low and extended her hand carefully. The hen still gave her a sharp look, but Kaylin managed to take 2 eggs and place them gently in the basket. When she stood, her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. See? Daniel said. You're learning. Later that day, Daniel showed her how to plant seeds in neat rows. They worked side by side, digging small holes, placing seeds, and covering them with soil. Kaylin's hands grew dirty, the soft silver of her skin smudged with brown earth. At first she wanted to wipe it off, but then she stopped. She realized the soil smelled alive. It was rough, messy, but it held the promise of growth. She thought of her people, who had called her barren and useless. Yet here, even small seeds that looked lifeless had a chance to grow if given care. That thought stayed with her as she pressed the last seed into the ground. Days turned into weeks, and Kaylin's routine began to form. She woke early, helped feed animals, learned to mend fences, and even tried to guide the tractor again. This time she did not crash it, though her driving was still shaky. At night, she sat with Daniel on the porch. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they simply watched the stars. Slowly, her heart began to settle. But Kaylin also struggled. Her body ached often, and sometimes she felt clumsy. When she spilled a bucket of milk one evening, she dropped to her knees, ashamed. I cannot do anything. Right, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. That's not true. You're doing fine. Mistakes happen. My people never forgave mistakes, she said bitterly. Well, Daniel replied, your people don't live here. On this farm, mistakes are how you learn. Those words stayed with her, soft but powerful. One evening, while Kaylin was fixing a broken basket, she heard Daniel's dog bark loudly. A stranger was approaching the farmhouse. It was a merchant, carrying goods to sell. He stopped to rest and shared food with Daniel while Kaylin stayed quiet. The merchant eyed her curiously. Strange to see an Alvani here, he said, especially one working the soil. Kaylin felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Daniel answered calmly. She's not strange. She's part of the farm. The merchant tilted his head. You must have paid little for her. If you sell her back, you could earn good profit. Daniel's expression hardened. She's not for sale. Kaylin kept her head down, but her heart raced. Once again, Daniel had chosen to keep her, not as property but as someone who mattered. After the merchant left, Kaylin asked quietly, why do you refuse their offers? You could have wealth, Daniel shrugged. Wealth means nothing if it costs you your soul. I don't trade people like cattle, and besides, you're worth more than credits. Her chest tightened, and she could not answer. No one had ever spoken of her like that. Weeks later, a storm swept across the colony. Heavy rain poured down, lightning split the sky, and winds shook the farmhouse. Kaylin was frightened at first. She had never seen weather so wild. On her world, weather was controlled, safe, predictable. But Daniel was calm. Together, they rushed outside to secure the animals and tie down loose parts of the barn. Rain soaked Kaylin's clothes and mud splashed on her legs, but she worked beside Daniel without hesitation. When they finally returned inside, dripping wet, Daniel handed her a towel. She laughed breathlessly, surprising herself. You're laughing? Daniel said, amused. I am alive, Kaylin said simply, and it feels real. That night, as the storm roared outside, Kaylin sat by the fire with Daniel. The farmhouse shook, but inside it was warm. She realized she felt safer here, in this small home with a human farmer, than she ever had in her people's cold palaces. Another change came slowly. Kaylin began to tell Daniel more about herself. She spoke of her childhood, of how her parents praised her beauty and grace until the tests showed she was infertile. She spoke of the whispers, the pitying looks, the way her name was erased from family records. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said simply, "They were wrong." His words were not flowery or grand, but they were steady, and Kaylin believed them. In return, Daniel told her about his parents who had built the farm with their own hands. He spoke of Earth, a world Kaylin had never seen. Oceans that stretched, farther than eyes could see. Forests older than empires. Mountains so tall they touched clouds. Kaylin listened in wonder. Her world had been beautiful, yes, but controlled, caged. Earth sounded wild, untamed, alive. As days passed, Kaylin began to feel different inside. She no longer walked with her head down. Her steps grew stronger, her hands steadier. She still made mistakes, but instead of despairing, she tried again. One morning, Daniel watched her carry 2 heavy buckets across the field without spilling a drop. "You're stronger than you think," he said. Kaylin gave him a small smile. "Maybe I am learning to be human." Daniel chuckled. "Or maybe you're just learning to be yourself." Those words sank deep into her heart. But not everything was easy. Some colonists from nearby farms did not trust her. They looked at her silver skin and whispered. A few asked Daniel why he kept an Alvani on his land. One day, Kaylin overheard a man mutter, "She's nothing but a cast-off. She'll bring trouble." The word stung, echoing the cruelty of her own people. That night she sat quietly on the porch, her hands folded in her lap. Daniel joined her, noticing her silence. "What's wrong?" "They do not want me here," she admitted. "They see me as broken, just as my people did." Daniel leaned back, staring at the stars. "You can't control what people see, but you can show them who you are. Over time, they'll learn, or they won't. Doesn't change your worth." Kaylin looked at him, studying his face. He spoke with such certainty, such calm strength. She wished she could believe as easily as he did. But his words gave her a little more courage. The weeks stretched into months. Slowly, the farm became her world. She grew used to the rhythm of the days, the crow of roosters, the hum of machines, the smell of fresh bread. She even grew fond of the animals she once feared. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Kaylin stood at the edge of the field. The crops she had planted weeks ago were sprouting, small green shoots pushing through the soil. She crouched down, running her fingers gently over the leaves. Life, she thought. Even in barren soil, life could grow if given a chance. And perhaps, so could she. That night, as she and Daniel shared a simple meal, Kaylin spoke softly. "Daniel, when I first came here, I thought I had lost everything. My family, my worth, my future. But now, I feel something different. I feel as if I am beginning again." Daniel met her gaze. "That's what life is, Kaylin. New beginnings. Out here, we build them with our own hands." She nodded, her chest warm with a feeling she could not yet name. For the first time since her exile, Kaylin no longer saw herself as broken. She saw herself as a seed, planted in strange soil, waiting for the chance to grow. And as she looked at Daniel across the table, she thought, perhaps this farm was the place where she would finally bloom. The days on the farm began to settle into a rhythm. Kaylin was no longer the stranger who stumbled with every task. She had grown stronger, her steps steady, her hands quick. The once soft silver skin of her palms now carried small calluses, and her arms no longer tired as easily. Daniel noticed the changes quietly. He never praised her too loudly, but sometimes, when she finished work with confidence, he gave her a small nod. That simple gesture meant more to her than the grand words of her people ever had. Kaylin thought she finally understood her place. Work, food, peace, and the quiet company of a man who never judged her. It was simple, but for her, it was new and precious. But life had other plans. It began one evening when the sky glowed with the fading fire of sunset. Daniel had gone to the edge of the colony with his small cargo cart to trade with neighbors. Kaylin waited at the farmhouse, preparing bread and stew for their meal. The dog barked suddenly, its ears pricked toward the road. Kaylin stepped outside, shading her eyes against the fading light. She saw Daniel's cart approaching, but it was moving faster than usual. When it stopped in front of the farmhouse, Daniel jumped down. His clothes were dusty, his face serious, and in his arms, wrapped in a worn blanket, were two small bundles. Kaylin froze. The bundles moved. She heard faint cries. High, weak, but alive. "Daniel?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is that?" Daniel carefully pulled back the blankets. Inside were two alien infants. Their skin was pale blue, their tiny hands curled tightly, their eyes barely open. "I found them," Daniel said quietly. "Raiders attacked a small caravan outside the colony. By the time I got there, it was too late. Their parents..." He shook his head. "They didn't survive. These two were left behind." Kaylin's chest tightened. The infants' cries were soft but full of need. They were helpless, abandoned, with no one to protect them. "What will we do?" she asked. Daniel looked at her with steady eyes. "We raise them." Kaylin's breath caught. "Raise them, but I..." Her words faltered. She remembered the cold voice of the Alvani healers, the words stamped across her records. Infertile. Her people had cast her out because she could not have children. Yet here were two infants reaching with tiny fingers, crying for comfort. Something deep inside her stirred, something she had thought dead. Daniel gently placed one of the children in her arms. The little body was light, fragile, warm. Kaylin froze, afraid she might break it, but the infant made a soft sound and nestled against her chest. Her heart thudded. She felt her throat tighten, her eyes burn. For the first time, Kaylin held life in her arms. Not seeds in the soil, not animals in the barn, but a child. Daniel watched her carefully. "Kaylin, you don't have to. I can manage." But Kaylin shook her head slowly. "No, I will not let them be alone. I will be their mother." From that day, the farmhouse was never the same. The nights were filled with soft cries, and Kaylin woke again and again to comfort the twins. She learned to hold them gently, to rock them until their cries turned into sighs. Daniel helped, but it was Kaylin who took the lead. It was as if the instinct had been hidden inside her all along, waiting for this moment. She learned how to prepare their milk from local supplies, how to keep them warm, how to soothe them when they grew restless. The dog stayed close, curious, and protective, as if it understood the importance of these new lives. At first, Kaylin feared the colony might object, but when neighbors visited and saw her with the children, they said nothing cruel. Some even softened. A woman from a nearby farm offered clothes for the infants. An older man brought medicine for fevers. Slowly, the whispers of doubt about Kaylin began to fade. She was no longer the infertile outcast. She was the woman who had taken in abandoned children when no one else would. One evening, Daniel found her sitting in the rocking chair with both infants asleep in her arms. The firelight painted her silver skin in warm colors, and her eyes shone with quiet joy. "They look peaceful," Daniel said softly. "They trust me," Kaylin whispered. "They know I will not let them go." Daniel nodded. "You've given them something no one else could." Kaylin looked at him, her voice trembling. "I thought I was broken, Daniel, worthless. But when I hold them, I feel whole." Daniel's gaze was steady. "You were never broken. You just needed a chance." Kaylin lowered her eyes, but her heart was full. Raising the twins was not easy. They cried often, sometimes both at once. Their small bodies needed constant care. Kaylin's days were filled with feeding, rocking, cleaning, and singing soft Alvani songs she had not sung in years. The farm work did not stop either. Daniel took on more of the heavy labor, never complaining. When Kaylin apologized for doing less, he shook his head. "You're doing the most important work now," he said. Kaylin realized he was right. These children would live because she cared for them. Every moment, every sleepless night was worth it. Months passed and the twins grew stronger. Their eyes brightened, their tiny hands reached for Kaylin's hair, their laughter filled the farmhouse. To Kaylin, their laughter was sweeter than any music her people had ever sung. The first time one of the twins spoke a word, simple, clumsy, but clear, Kaylin nearly cried. The word was Ma. Daniel heard it too. He smiled gently. "Looks like they know who you are." Kaylin held the child close, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Mother," she whispered. "They call me Mother." Her people had cast her away for being unable to bear children. Yet here, in this simple farmhouse, two small voices had given her the name she had always longed for. But peace never lasted long in the frontier. One night, while Kaylin was putting the twins to bed, Daniel returned from the colony with tense news. Raiders had been seen again in nearby systems. They were the same kind who had destroyed the caravan that carried the twins' parents. "They'll come here eventually," Daniel said grimly. "We need to be ready." Kaylin's heart clenched. She looked at the children sleeping peacefully. The thought of losing them filled her with fire. "We will protect them," she said firmly. Daniel met her gaze. Together. In the weeks that followed, the farm prepared for danger. Daniel repaired fences, sharpened tools, and reinforced the barn. Kaylin, drawing from the training she had once received as a noblewoman, offered strategies she remembered from her people's defense schools. Though the Alvani had discarded her, she had not forgotten everything they had taught her. She marked escape routes, set up warning signals, and taught Daniel how to spot weaknesses in enemy movements. Daniel was impressed. "Didn't know you had this kind of knowledge," he said. "My people trained all their children in the art of war," Kaylin explained. "They thought it noble, but they did not think me worthy to use it. Now I will use it to defend my family." Her voice was steady, and Daniel believed her. Life on the farm changed again. Work continued, but there was always an edge of tension. Kaylin kept the twins close, watching the horizon for danger. Yet even in the shadow of fear, her love for them grew stronger. She realized something important. Motherhood was not about giving birth. It was about giving love, giving protection, giving oneself for another. One night, as she rocked the twins to sleep, Kaylin whispered to them, "You were abandoned, and I was abandoned. But together, we are not lost. Together, we are family." The children stirred softly, their tiny hands gripping her fingers, and Kaylin knew her words were true. The colony soon learned of Kaylin's new role. Whispers turned into respect. People began to greet her warmly, bringing small gifts for the twins. Where once they had seen her as a cast-off, now they saw her as a mother. Kaylin felt pride, not the empty pride of her people's noble halls, but the quiet, real pride of a woman who had built a life from nothing. And as she stood one evening, on the porch holding a twin in each arm, Daniel stepped beside her. The sky was filled with stars, the fields golden in the moonlight. "Do you regret staying?" Daniel asked quietly. Kaylin shook her head, her voice firm. "No, for the first time I do not regret anything. I have a home, I have children, and I have hope." Daniel nodded, and for a long time they stood in silence, watching the sky. The farm was never truly quiet again after Daniel brought news of the raiders. Every day carried a shadow of worry. Kaylin felt it in her chest whenever she looked at the horizon, whenever she heard the faint hum of engines in the sky. She had known danger in her youth, but this was different. Now she had something precious to lose. The twins slept peacefully in their small wooden cribs, unaware of the threat. Kaylin often stood over them at night, her silver skin glowing softly in the lamplight, whispering promises that she would never let harm reach them. Daniel worked harder than ever. He repaired fences, added locks to the barn, and sharpened every tool that could be used as a weapon. Kaylin joined him, though she also spent much of her time caring for the children. Together, they formed a quiet but determined plan. They would not run. They would protect their home. One afternoon, as Kaylin hung washed clothes on the line, Daniel approached with a serious look. "I spoke to the neighbors," he said. "They've seen movement near the outer fields. It might be scouts." Kaylin's hand stilled on the cloth. Her heart quickened, but her voice remained calm. "Then we have little time." Daniel nodded. "We need to be ready." Kaylin thought for a moment. Her mind reached back to the lessons of her childhood. Though she had been unwanted, her family had still forced her to learn the arts of defense and tactics. She remembered the strategies of placement, the use of terrain, the importance of traps. "We must prepare the land," she said. "The soil and fences can be our allies." Daniel raised a brow. "You know how to do that?" "Yes," Kaylin said firmly. "My people trained even the children of noble houses. They did not think I would ever lead, but I remember what they taught me, and now I will use it." The days that followed became a blur of work. Daniel built hidden barriers along the main road to slow vehicles. Kaylin guided him in making simple traps, pits covered with branches, ropes tied to pull fences down at the right moment, and sharp stakes placed in the ground where raiders might rush. Neighbors began to notice the preparations. A few came to help. At first, some doubted Kaylin. She could see it in their eyes. An infertile Alvani giving orders? But when they saw her calm confidence and the cleverness of her plans, their doubt turned into trust. "She's got a sharp mind," one man muttered after following her directions. "We'll be safer with her leading." Kaylin felt a strange warmth at those words. For once, her skills were not dismissed. They were needed. The night before the attack, the farmhouse was quiet but tense. Kaylin sat on the porch with Daniel, the twins asleep inside. The air was heavy with silence, the stars cold above. "Do you think we can hold them back?" Daniel asked softly. Kaylin's gaze was steady. "We must, not just for us, but for the children. They deserve a life free of fear." Daniel nodded slowly. "I've never been much of a fighter. I know the land, the soil, the animals. But war..." He shook his head. Kaylin placed a hand on his arm. "Strength is not only in fighting. Your heart is steady. You do not give up. That is strength too." Their eyes met in the dim light, and Daniel gave her a small, tired smile. The raiders came at dawn. Engines roared in the distance, breaking the stillness of morning. Dust rose on the horizon as a group of armed vehicles approached. The sound grew louder, the ground trembling beneath their wheels. Kaylin stood at the farmhouse door, her silver skin shining faintly in the early light. She felt no fear, only fire. Behind her the twins slept, and that was all the reason she needed to be strong. Daniel stood beside her, holding an old rifle. His grip was firm, though his face was pale. Around the farm, neighbors hidden in cover waited for her signal. The raiders did not expect resistance. Their leader, a scarred alien with sharp teeth, shouted as they neared the farm. "This land belongs to us now. Surrender or burn." Kaylin stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "You will not take this farm. Leave, or you will regret it." The raiders laughed cruelly, but when they rushed forward, their vehicles hit the first hidden barriers Daniel had built. Wheels stuck in mud pits, fences collapsed at the pull of ropes, and sharp stakes tore into tires. Chaos erupted. "Now!" Kaylin shouted. From cover, the colonists attacked with rifles and tools. Shots rang out, shouts echoed, and the raiders stumbled under the sudden resistance. Kaylin fought like she had never fought before. She carried no rifle, but she used her knowledge to direct the battle. She shouted commands, guiding colonists to hold lines, to strike where the raiders were, weak to retreat when needed. Her voice was calm, sharp, unyielding. Daniel fired beside her, his aim true. Though he was no soldier, his will was strong. He thought of the children sleeping inside, and every shot he took was for them. The raiders, shocked by the defense, grew desperate. Some tried to set fire to the barn, but Kaylin was faster. She led a group to push them back, her heart pounding, her mind sharp. At one point, a raider lunged at her with a blade. Kaylin grabbed a broken fence post and struck hard, sending him sprawling. Her chest heaved, but she stood tall, her eyes blazing. The fight raged for what felt like hours, though it was less than one. Slowly, the raiders began to falter. Their leader shouted, but his voice carried less power now. Vehicles burned, their numbers thinned, and the colonists refused to give in. At last, seeing their defeat, the raiders retreated. Engines roared, again as the survivors fled into the distance, leaving behind wreckage and silence. The farm was scarred, fences broken, fields torn. But it still stood, and most importantly, the children were safe. When the battle was over, the colonists gathered in the yard. They were tired, bruised, some wounded, but alive. Many turned to Kaylin with respect in their eyes. "You led us," one woman said quietly. "Without you, we would have fallen." Kaylin felt her throat tighten. She had once been cast out, as worthless. Now she had been the shield of a community. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You saved us," he said softly. Kaylin shook her head. "We saved each other. Alone, we would have fallen. Together, we are strong." That night, the farmhouse was quiet again. The twins slept peacefully, unaware of the danger that had passed. Kaylin sat by their cribs, watching their small chests rise and fall. Her body ached, her mind was weary, but her heart was full. She thought of the day she had been sold, the shame of being unwanted. She thought of the market where Daniel had bought her for a handful of credits. And now, here she was, a mother, a protector, a leader. She whispered softly to the sleeping twins, "I was cast aside, but now I have found my place. I will never let anyone take you from me." Later, Kaylin joined Daniel on the porch. The air was cool, the stars bright. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft night sounds. Finally, Daniel spoke. "You were incredible today. You're more than I ever imagined when I first saw you at that market." Kaylin looked at him, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "And you? You gave me a chance when no one else would. Without you, I would still be lost." Daniel shook his head. "No, you were never lost. You just needed a place to grow." Kaylin smiled faintly, her heart warm. For the first time, she believed she had truly found that place. The farm had survived the storm of raiders. The scars would take time to heal, but Kaylin knew healing was possible. Just as she had healed, she had discovered strength she never knew she had. Strength born not from pride or bloodline, but from love, purpose, and the will to protect what mattered most. And as she stood at the porch, watching the horizon, Kaylin whispered to herself, "I am no longer trash. I am a mother. I am part of this land, and I will fight for it always." The farm was quiet again, but the air carried a new sense of life. The raiders had retreated, and the scars they left behind slowly began to heal. Daniel and Kaylin worked together to repair fences, clear burned patches of earth, and rebuild what had been damaged. Kaylin moved through the farm with a sense of calm strength. The twins, now growing quickly, followed her with small, unsteady steps. Their laughter rang across the fields, a sound Kaylin had never imagined could bring such joy. She watched them play, their tiny hands reaching for flowers, their eyes wide, with wonder at the world around them. Daniel approached, carrying a bucket of water. He set it down near the garden and smiled at her. "They're growing fast," he said. Kaylin nodded, her eyes soft. "They are, and I am growing with them." The months that followed were filled with hard work, laughter, and lessons. Kaylin taught the twins the ways of the farm. She showed them how to plant seeds in straight lines, how to care for animals, and even how to recognize the clouds that brought rain. The children learned quickly, their small hands imitating her movements, their laughter mixing with the crow of roosters and the lowing of cows. Daniel watched from a distance, proud. Kaylin had transformed the farmhouse into a home filled with life and warmth. He sometimes thought about the day he had bought her at the market, the way she had looked so small and unsure, and he marveled at how far she had come. Kaylin had changed, too. The silver of her skin no longer seemed fragile. She carried herself with quiet confidence. She no longer feared her own mistakes. Instead, she saw them as steps toward growth. And with every challenge, she grew stronger. The colony began to notice the family Kaylin and Daniel had created. People from nearby farms came to visit, offering food, tools, and sometimes simple gifts for the twins. Whispers of admiration replaced the old murmurs of doubt. "She's no longer an outcast," one neighbor said quietly. "She's the heart of this farm." Kaylin heard the words and felt a warmth in her chest. For years she had been cast aside, treated as worthless because of a label she could not control. Now she had found value not in status or wealth, but in love and purpose. One day a group of colonists came with an offer. They wanted Kaylin to teach children in the nearby colony about farming and survival. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to leave the twins, but Daniel encouraged her. "You've taught them more than anyone else could," he said. "Now you can share your knowledge with others. We'll manage here together." Kaylin smiled. The idea of helping others gave her a new sense of purpose. She realized that her life could be bigger than herself, bigger than the twins. She could use her experiences to guide others, to build something lasting. Raising the twins had taught her patience, courage, and the meaning of unconditional love. She had once believed herself broken, discarded by her own people, but she now understood that her worth was not defined by anyone else. It was defined by what she chose to give and protect. One afternoon, Kaylin watched the twins chasing each other across the field, their laughter echoing against the hills. She felt a deep sense of peace. Daniel walked beside her holding a small basket of freshly picked vegetables. "They are happy," he said softly. "Yes," Kaylin agreed. "They are, and we have built something they can call home." She realized that home was not the grand halls of her childhood, not the jewels or the silk. Home was this: the smell of earth after rain, the warmth of the sun on her face, the sound of children laughing, the quiet strength of someone who loved her. Life on the farm continued, but Kaylin also began to think about the future. She and Daniel made plans together, discussing ways to expand the farm, improve the soil, and perhaps even start a small market for their produce. Kaylin was amazed at how much she had learned from Daniel. She had once thought of humans as simple, even weak compared to her people. But she had come to understand that human strength was different. It was quiet, steady, and unyielding. Humans had patience, courage, and an unwavering sense of community, and Kaylin had seen it firsthand. Daniel had never abandoned her. He had treated her as an equal, valued her knowledge, and protected her when danger threatened. He had shown her that strength was not in status or birthright, but in loyalty, love, and action. The twins grew rapidly. They learned to speak in both human and Alvani words, their curiosity endless. Kaylin taught them the songs of her people, blending them with the simple tunes Daniel played on his wooden flute. The farmhouse rang with music, laughter, and joy. Neighbors began to bring their own children to learn from Kaylin. She taught them to plant seeds, care for animals, and respect the land. She showed them the value of patience and hard work, sharing lessons she had once learned the hard way. Through her teaching, Kaylin became a symbol of hope. The infertile girl, cast aside by her people, had created life, not just in the twins, but in the community around her. She had shown that worth was not determined by labels, but by the actions and love one gave. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kaylin sat on the porch with Daniel and the twins. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple, the fields glowing in the fading light. The twins leaned against her, tired but happy. Daniel held her hand, their fingers intertwined. They watched in silence, letting the peace of the moment wash over them. Kaylin thought about her past, the pain, the rejection, the fear, and she thought about her present, the life she had built, the children she raised, the home she had created. She realized that she had been given a gift far greater than what her people had denied her. She had been given the chance to choose her own family, her own home, and her own path. The colony began to thrive in new ways. Inspired by Kaylin and Daniel, more families settled nearby, planting crops, building homes, and protecting each other. The farm became a center of learning, growth, and community. Kaylin found herself respected not for her birth or status, but for her courage, wisdom, and compassion. The same people who had once whispered doubts now sought her advice, trusted her guidance, and admired her resilience. And Kaylin, who had once been sold like trash, finally understood that her true value had never been in the opinion of others. It had always been within her, waiting for the chance to grow. The twins' laughter filled the farmhouse one morning as they chased each other through the garden. Kaylin watched them, her heart swelling with love. She had once thought she would never be a mother, never know the joy of raising children. Now she had two small humans who depended on her, loved her, and called her mother. Daniel approached, carrying a small basket of berries. "They're growing fast," he said with a smile. "Yes," Kaylin agreed, "and they've given me more than I ever imagined." She looked around at the farm, the repaired fences, the flourishing crops, the animals grazing peacefully. She looked at Daniel, steady and kind, and then at the children, full of life and curiosity. "This is home," she whispered. Years passed. The twins grew taller, stronger, and wiser under Kaylin and Daniel's care. They learned to respect the land, value community, and understand the importance of kindness. Kaylin taught them about her people, the mistakes of pride, and the lessons of courage. She shared with them the story of her past, not to burden them, but to show them that even when life casts you aside, you can create something beautiful. The colony grew, inspired by the strength of Kaylin and Daniel. Families thrived, farms expanded, and the land bloomed under their care. Kaylin became a symbol, not just for the Alvani or humans, but for all who had been cast aside or doubted. She showed that love, patience, and courage could transform lives. One evening, Kaylin stood at the edge of the field watching the sun set. Daniel joined her, the twins playing nearby. She felt a quiet happiness settle over her, a peace she had never known as a child in the halls of her people. "I am not what they said I was," she whispered. "I am more. I am loved, I am needed, I am home." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "And you have made this place home for all of us." Kaylin smiled, her silver skin catching the last rays of the sun. She thought of her past, of the pain and rejection, and she realized it no longer held power over her. She had built a life of purpose, love, and strength. She had created a family, nurtured a community, and shown that even those cast aside could rise to greatness. The twins ran to her, laughing and shouting, their small hands reaching for hers. Kaylin picked them up, holding them close, and felt the full weight of life and love she had once believed impossible. Together, they looked at the horizon, at the vast, open world before them. And for the first time in her life, Kaylin knew that she was exactly where she belonged. She had been sold like trash, rejected for something she could not change. But now she was more than she had ever dreamed. A mother, a protector, a teacher, a symbol of hope. And the farm, with its golden fields, thriving animals, and laughter of children, was proof that love, courage, and determination could create a future brighter than any palace or jewel-filled hall. Kaylin took a deep breath of the fresh air, letting it fill her lungs. She looked at Daniel, at the twins, and at the horizon. "I am home," she whispered again, and this time, she meant it with every part of her heart.